Hi, this is Susanna Barton. I'm the founder of the Grand Plans online community, and I am thrilled to welcome you to this podcast today where we seek to normalize aging through planning and good old-fashioned real talk conversation. Today we have Amy Gunther in the studio with us today. She's an ACE certified personal trainer and group fitness instructor, and she's the owner of Gunther Personal Training here in Northeast Florida. You can find this podcast on our YouTube channel and on mainly through our website, www.mygrandplans.com, where I download all of these episodes for you to watch. So thanks for being with us. Hi, and welcome to Season 2, Episode 5 of the Grand Plans podcast. And today, I am so excited to be here with an old friend, Amy Gunther. She and I met many, many years ago when I was a reporter at the Business Journal, and she was a fledgling scientist at JU doing some manatee research. And today, Amy is the owner of Gunther Personal Training here in St. Johns County, and I'm just thrilled to talk with her today. So welcome, Amy.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Yeah.
Always love hearing those manatee stories from
yes.
way back.
Yes, and I won't even go into details about how I threw up on the plane and how embarrassing it was. And
Friends for life.
yes, right. So anyway, today we are talking about health and fitness for the over 50 set. And Amy, why don't you tell us a little bit about what you do and what your work entails?
Sure. So I would say my fitness journey really began as a youngster. Yes, I did science, into my adulthood, but a naval deployment moved us from the Jacksonville area and over to Hawaii, actually. And I really needed to sort of recreate myself from scientist to mother to naval wife to something else. And that's sort of where the love of fitness continued. I started taking classes to become a personal trainer, to become a group fitness instructor, and it paired nicely with having young kids at home, setting your own hours, and still feeling useful. So that passion has just really ramped up over the years, and I suppose this is about year 13 that I have been doing personal training, fitness classes, consulting, and I love it every day. I love doing my work.
Yeah, and you have started focusing a little more, maybe it's because of your own age and stage, but on fitness and health for those of us over the age of 50.
Exactly. Not only because, I'm approaching that as well.
Active
but
adults? Is that
active older adults.
Yeah.
So the term is typically used to describe adults 50 and older. That is a giant range. Clearly, there are differing levels of ability from someone who maybe is 50 and someone who is 70. So that term is just, sometimes nicer to say than seniors. If you want to be called a senior, you can. But active older adults generally is referring to the audience over 50. And it wasn't just because, I was in my 40s at the time and thinking, because it's really been about 10 years that I've been leaning into the older demographic, at a fitness facility, say a commercial gym where I worked last, it was evident that there was a large population of people over the age of 60 in this instance, and they were very active. They did all the classes, but there really wasn't anything geared to them. Mm-hmm. There wasn't an active older adults class.
So you saw a need.
There was absolutely a need and a gap. Mm-hmm. And, the demographics, American demographics tell us that baby boomers, the majority of our population is over 60 or 65. You could probably speak to that more specifically, with that exact data. And I remember going to the club manager and saying, can I do something just for seniors? They're participating in all the classes, but they do want modifications. What if we made something just special for them? And they denied me. And I was just so surprised.
That's so rude.
They didn't feel the need. I don't belong to that facility anymore. So, after my return to Jacksonville, the whole naval career thing ended. We made our return here to Jacksonville. I started, helping the YMCA, and they are huge believers in the whole active older adult community, and they take it even further. They have a Silver Sneakers license, which is a brand.
I love that, by the way, Silver Sneakers.
Silver Sneakers it's a branded, licensed program, and it's sometimes offered free through many people's health insurance. So that's an incredible benefit.
Right.
But the bottom line is they're targeting people over the age of 50. They want to be there for them, not just in fitness, but we have book club. We have all of these wonderful things that address what helps an active older adult not just stay active physically, but really mentally and socially as well. So I just loved that. So for the last 4 or 5 years, I've been leaning hard into, the aging demographic, not just because I am aging, but because I really believe there was a gap. I see it getting filled here in Jacksonville better than other places where I've lived, and I love it.
Yeah, and as a consequence, you've synthesized a lot of data and experience and have come up with 7 pillars, we're calling them pillars for now, of things that we could all be doing now that will greatly enhance our physical and mental experience as older adults. And
exactly, yes.
I'm hopeful that today we will talk about the first 4, which are strength, balance, cardiovascular health, and flexibility.
Correct.
So with that, and just in case anyone's super curious, the next time we will be talking about posture, cognition, and reaction time, which are the last 3 pillars of Amy's 7 pillars. So with that, let's start talking about strength. These are things that you have seen, I would imagine, in most of your clients and in people who you've worked with over the years, where these are pretty common areas of attention.
Correct.
So strength being number 1. Let's get into strength. Why is it important to be a strong person?
So, and I will say strong. I don't know if I would say you have to be a strong person, but there has to be certain levels of strength that one can manage so that they can fulfill their activities of daily living. What does that mean? That's a term you might hear. Right. That means getting yourself to and from the bathroom, being able to get up from the toilet seat, walking your dog, going to get the mail, going up and down a flight of steps, whatever your activities of daily living are. You need to have enough strength in your limbs to be able to achieve those things. So, I absolutely see members, and I would say I work with people between the ages of 50 and 90 plus on a daily basis. And even small increases in their strength has long-reaching benefits. For example, I was working with a woman who had a stroke, and she had some mobility issues for several months. As a result, one of the favorite things she did every day was ride her horse. Yeah. All she wanted to do when she came to me was ride her horse. And we worked on her, once her mobility was achieved with, occupational therapy and physical therapy, she was ready for that next step. We worked on her flexibility, worked on her leg strength, we worked on her arm strength, and we got her back up on that horse, and that's all she wanted. So that was her activity of daily living. Right. It was a little more sophisticated perhaps than just, going to the grocery store. So let's talk about bone density. So whether you want to get on a horse or whether you just want to be able to go into the store and carry your own bag of potting soil out to your trunk, you need to have the structural integrity to do so. Right. And we're talking about bones. So bone loss starts occurring for women as early as 35 with a decrease in estrogen. It's not as significant in men. It doesn't start as early as in men as it does in women, particularly after menopause. But bones thin. Yeah. Bones thin. You can actually encourage new bone to lay down with strength training. So I know that sounds counterintuitive. You don't think, well, I'm 80. Can I actually make new bone? Your body is encouraged to make new bone. It starts with a bone cell. It grows, and you can make bone your whole life.
So fascinating.
It does decrease with age. The biggest stimulus besides, a healthy diet, vitamin C, calcium, any of the things your doctor says you might be lacking. If you have all the vital nutrients, the thing that could really push you over the edge to increase your bone density is strength training. Putting that tension, the pressure on the muscles sends a signal to the bones to start making more bone cells, to start lay down new bone. So you not only prevent it from decreasing, you can actually get new bone cells to lay down, just depending where you are on that spectrum of age, 50 to 80, for example.
So where do you start? Say I've been doing zero strength training. I'm not super active. I mean, where does a person start? I guess it depends on where you are in your level of physical activity, but
it does. And obviously make sure your doctor has cleared you for physical activity. If you are cleared to walk, then you can start with walking, because your own body weight, I know you think, walking doesn't seem that hard, but you're holding up maybe 140 pounds. Yeah. So that counts.
Right.
That's something. And so walking, it's not the best form of strength training, but it's the first and foremost thing that you can do is you can put some steps in. Right. That will help. Certain bones, like the long bones of the femur, for example, are the ones that respond quickly and well. So something like you go to your gym, maybe you have a membership at your senior center or at your local YMCA, and you're just doing like a leg press machine. That would be an example of something easy you can do. If you aren't in a facility, you can do things like practice squatting. You sit in your chair, you stand up from your chair, you sit in your chair, you stand up from your chair, repeat. And things like that can also help build leg strength. And there's lots of videos out there. If you're somebody who, like my mother, who does her virtual Zumba,
Oh, well, that sounds
a couple of
sassy.
times a week, dancing, that's a good one too. Right. Because again, you're bearing weight on those long bones because you're standing. So being sedentary and sitting is certainly not going to help put pressure on those leg muscles.
But to gain more strength, you don't have to necessarily spend a lot of money on this, that, or the other. Or, I mean, these are things that you can do in your home, around your house, in your neighborhood.
Absolutely. And, I suppose it's probably hard to describe certain exercises, auditorily versus showing you them visually. But, I have people, do calf raises. I say, here's your homework. Do some calf raises, up and down on your tiptoes while you're, in the kitchen making your dinner. Any, lifting, even vacuuming takes a certain amount of strength. I mean, you do have to get moving, but yes, even 5-pound dumbbells, doing some arm exercises with 5-pound dumbbells is a step in the right direction.
Or what are those balls called? Is it a kettle?
It's not a ball. There's a kettlebell.
A bell.
It sort of looks
a
like
bell.
a cowbell.
Yes. With a handle on it.
Actually, it's a very nice grip. And some people might prefer that to a dumbbell because the grip is pretty comfortable in the hand.
I do this every morning, and I stare at my husband while I'm twirling the bell around, and I'm sure he thinks I'm a total
Where are you
freak.
twirling it?
Oh, I'm doing it like around
through your legs while you're in a hold, a squat hold.
I do the squat holds and through the legs, and then I just pass it from one hand to do it like around my body thing. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
That's good. Hey, if you feel in the
glad
burn,
no one ever sees me doing this. It's a little embarrassing, but anyway.
So strength, I guess, to sum it up, you can do things on your own. You can do things like walking, riding the bike. You can increase the tension on your bike. If you balance wise, you feel safe on a bike, you can always, increase the tension, especially if you have, one of those, with the handlebars, you can, click it to make it a higher gear. It makes it harder.
Or you can get an e-bike and pretend like you're really exerting yourself.
That's not going to build strength. You could choose to ride your bike on the beach and sand. That would be harder than on the road. Right. So that would be an easy way to make it feel a little bit harder.
You can
You can go to a facility and use certain machines there. That was the second way I suggested. Third way is to purchase something in your house, like little dumbbells, a kettlebell, and do some body weight exercises in your home, be it squats, calf raises, dumbbell work, things like that. Yeah. So those are 3 ways you can get more strength.
Good stuff. And then moving on to number 2, which is super important and something that I feel like changes a little as we age, is balance. Tell me a little bit about why that's important. I mean, and is it true? I mean, do we lose our sense of balance more as we age, or is that just a myth?
Okay, so let's get scientific on this
Okay.
one. So, balance, why does it matter? Number one reason is fall prevention. So, balance, you hear these stories of, someone's older mother fell, broke a hip, etc. Falling is a problem
I mean,
amongst.
I know I've fallen more. Like just
Do you
in
think?
my 40s, when I was running, I fell all the time.
So I would say if you're in your 40s or even 50s and you feel like you're falling more, it's probably not linked to your brain, which is the direction I'm heading with this
Okay.
conversation. It might be that you're just not moving about as much as you used to. So you just are a little off kilter. There is 100% a mind muscle connection
Yeah.
between, the brain and the muscle. Let me give you an example.
Okay.
If you've ever tried a dance class, I give the example of myself. The first time I ever took a step aerobics class, I'm a perfectly competent athlete, but boy, was I lousy. I could not figure out how to watch the instructor lift his right leg while he's saying lift your left, because he has to teach mirrored. And then am I lifting my right or my left? Then he says turn, put it down. You're up on a step, you're down a step. It was atrocious.
Yeah.
My brain just couldn't handle it. My brain could not adequately convey the message to my muscles of how to move in space. When you are used to moving all the time, zipping around an office, in and out of a grocery store, up and down stairs, your younger activities of daily living, your brain and muscles are in continual conversation about how you're supposed to get off balance, right yourself, turn a corner, right yourself, go up and down the stairs, right yourself. If you're not moving as much, maybe you're a little more sedentary, you read a little bit more, you have an office job, it's not uncommon to just feel like you've lost a little bit of balance. That is not the same thing as when an older person, let's say maybe someone in their 70s or 80s, is losing balance. That has to do with their nervous system. The transmission between that mind and the muscle is happening between nerves that have a coating, and it's actually like a fatty coating. It's called a myelin sheath. As we age, that myelin sheath also breaks down, which makes transmissions a little less effective. Imagine you have a copper wire, and that copper wire that used to run electricity very smoothly has gotten a little kinked up over the years in certain areas. That would be an example. You wouldn't get as good of a current. Sort of the same thing with a nerve. So it's not because they're being sedentary. It's just because time, has broken down that myelin sheath a little bit. If they're underweight, that's another problem. If sometimes older people get grossly underweight, their nutrition isn't as good. And I'm talking about people who maybe are, I don't want to say infirm, but have really, not gotten to a place where they're as active. That myelin sheath further breaking down and they're stumbling. They've truly lost their balance. It's not momentary. It's really a little more global for them, more common.
Can you improve, sharpen, fatten up your balance through exercise, nutrition?
The first thing I would do is try to prevent that from happening by making sure you're having a balanced diet. Good fats, good, vegetable derived, plant derived fats, avocados, olives, things like that. The Mediterranean diet's huge on that whole thing. But balance to some degree, and until you get much, much older, is move it or lose it. Okay. You are training your brain. So something I do with my clients all the time is I practice getting them off balance. How can you learn to right yourself if you're always right? You have to get off kilter. So think about a boat in the ocean. It's listing left. It's listing right. That boat's keel allows it to come straight up again. So as adults, we have to practice listing a little, getting off balance so that we can let that line of communication between the brain and the muscles to stay established. It's a synapse, that you're building and maintaining. The ability of your brain to tell your muscle, here's how I want you to move in space, improves with practice. It's called proprioception. That is the word for it. So, for example, here's how you'd practice.
Yes, that's what I was about to ask.
Here's a simple thing you can do that I do with my peeps. You have them maybe stand next to a chair or a piece of furniture so they have an area where they can hold on to if they need to. And just do what I call the flamingo. Think about a flamingo. They stand with one leg up. So balance on one leg, try 30 seconds, stare at a spot that's not moving, or lightly hold on to something if you really need assistance. See how many times you touch down. in 30 seconds? Is it 4 times? Is it 6 times? And then do it on the other side. One side will probably be better than the other, and that's normal. Go back to the first leg, try it again. Almost every time I do this with people, they're better on the second time through. Try it a third time through. By the third time, that pathway, that synapse between the brain and the muscle has really clarified. And that proprioception, that term that I use, proprioception, has occurred, and that balance has improved just in 3 attempts.
Wow. So that the adage, practice makes perfect, or helps at least. I mean, so the more practice, the more you flex that muscle.
Yeah.
Internally.
It's neuroscience.
Yeah.
It's neurobiology. Yes, it's muscular. It's neuromuscular.
Right.
Let's say that. So
Yeah.
yes, keep move it or lose it. Keep practicing. 100%.
Okay. Oh, you're so smart. You are one of the smartest, like scientifically inclined athletes I've ever met in my life. It makes me feel like I just don't know anything about nothing. So we're going to move on to number 3, which is a big one. It is the beating heart of the entire conversation, and that's about our heart health. And why is the heart such an important? I mean, obviously, it's the center of everything, but why is it important to us as we age? Why is it important to have strength of heart?
So let's talk about the functions of the heart in answering that question. So it's the heart's job to circulate your blood throughout your whole body, your brain. What's it carrying in the blood that's so important? Sugar, nutrients, and oxygen. So if your cells don't have nutrients, they don't have oxygen, they'll die. So we have to make sure that your heart can pump everywhere. So that means your blood pressure is good. Your arteries aren't clogged.
And what are the inputs for all of that to make sure that you've got a healthy heart?
Well, there is a bit of a genetic, aspect that sometimes you don't always know about.
Right.
And I will say that the heart is not easy to study. People can have clogged arteries. They can have, especially, ones that cause heart attacks that they don't know, because we don't have like a Star Trek scanner that just bzz, looks at everything on the inside. It's not always easy to study a heart. Can we? Yes. There's catheters and there's, certain angiograms and things like that. But generally speaking, you just have to do your best to make sure you aren't eating those fat-derived cholesterols. We talked about the Mediterranean diet just a moment ago and the plant-based fats. Fats are great for you, but you should have more of them from plant sources than animal sources, because the animal sources are what are called saturated fats. They're solids at room temperature. Think of a brick of cold butter. If that was in your veins, of course it could slow the flow of blood. It's like, slapping a bunch of lard on the inside of a hose and hoping the water goes through. Yeah. So, starting as young as like teenagers, even. I remember having my first high cholesterol test when I was only 14. Of course, back then we were still learning about cholesterol,
Right.
and we know so much more now, and foods are made in different ways. Companies are lowering cholesterols. We're a little more aware. So from the time your kids are kids, watching saturated fats for cholesterols.
Can you turn it around?
You
some
can
point?
totally turn it around. Certain
Say
foods.
you've been a junk food junkie. I mean, I love bacon. I love red meat. I love all the bad things. Not in mass, but I do. But so is there, like, if you're that kind of person, can you stop and say, I'm making changes, and will that?
You can. You can 100% turn around.
Okay.
Now, can you, obviously the most efficient way to correct a very clogged artery is like a medical procedure, like you have a stent put in maybe in one of your arteries to prevent a heart attack because you've perhaps been diagnosed with something very severe. But from what can I do in my kitchen? In the kitchen, you could, certain things like oats, eating more grains. There are definitely, oatmeal has been linked to
I've
reducing
seen that on the
cholesterols,
box.
not like
Is
the
it
kind you
true?
get in the bag, with sugar, the instant kind, like whole grain oats. So fibers, things like that can have an effect. But the easiest thing to do is not put the bad things in your mouth.
Okay.
Instead of trying to mitigate some of the damage, why don't we try to prevent it in the first place?
Right.
That would be my first thing. And then exercise. Think about that hose. If you have something on the inside of your hose, you blast the water and hope it comes out of there. So exercise kind of does the same thing. Your cardiovascular system, your heart rate will increase with movement.
Is there a level that's more like you're talking about shooting the water through? I mean, if you do is it...
Well, for active older adults, I wouldn't say you need to do high intensity. Okay. I would discourage you from doing like a high intensity, workout. I wouldn't say get your heart rate, to where you're sucking wind. That's not really, recommended for people, 50 and over for a variety of reasons. Even if you're fit, that's a different conversation. Yeah. But even if you're just walking, doing some quick walking on the beach and your heart rate goes up to maybe 115, 120, you're definitely, helping yourself. You're helping to keep the not only the blood flowing in terms of heart health, but for people who have a little neuropathy, a little numbness in their limbs, type 2 diabetics often have this. Walking or any type of it could be riding a bike, it could be dancing. These are types of cardiovascular exercise. They not only, help keep your vessels clearer of cholesterol. It promotes circulation into the further extremities, down in the toes, the fingers, the hands, things that aging people sometimes start to lose because, like a lot of other things, there's kind of a warranty on our parts and, circulation starts to go as well, especially in the extremities. So it's very good for helping you keep that feeling in your hands and your feet. And then you're probably going to ask me examples.
Well, I was going to ask, yes, earlier we talked about some of the different ways you can exercise or opportunities to do things. And it may not be exactly what you think. I mean, dancing certainly is a form of exercise.
I will say the exact same, the three things I gave you as examples of strength training would also bring your heart rate up a little bit. Anytime you use the big muscles of the legs, like if you're practicing sitting in your chair and standing up, which is like a squat, those large muscles are going to demand more oxygen. So your heart rate's going to go up to accommodate that need for oxygen delivery. So in addition to lifting weights, things like taking a walk, dancing, I feel my heart rate vacuuming sometimes, going up and down stairs, swimming, playing, cutting the grass, anything that makes your heart rate go up, a bit. Most people have a resting heart rate around 65, for example. If it goes up to 85 or 90, you're absolutely doing cardio. You get credit for that.
Yeah. Playing with your grandkids.
100%. Playing with your grandkids.
Yeah. Well, I love it. And are there any other inputs beyond dietary and physical activity or exercise to maintain cardiovascular health?
We said nutrition. We said movement. I think those are probably the main bits. Make sure you're keeping those arteries open for good heart health. Salt, watch your salt.
And what about
that's a blood pressure thing?
Being aware of your blood pressure, any heart related.
I would hope that if you're over the age of 50, you're getting your regular physicals and you're aware.
Yeah, right.
I think it's probably unusual to be 60 and not know that you have high blood pressure.
Right.
Everyone should be getting annual physicals. And certainly if you're going to start trying to increase your level of activity, you should make sure that there's no stone unturned. Your doctor's cleared you for whatever you want to do.
Yep. Amy, there's so much to think about.
There's a lot to think about. Yeah. No, it's not that easy. It's actually really easy. It's not that hard.
No, I know. And it's kind of fun because I'm thinking like, oh yeah, sometimes I vacuum and sometimes, I walk a lot now. I used to run a lot.
So I will tell you, the American Medical Association recommends 150 minutes of activity per week for the average American. That's regardless of age. Now, obviously, if you have some extenuating medical situation, it might not apply to you, but your doctor would be like, hey, don't do that. So, more information from the doctor. So of that 150 minutes per week, 2 to 3 times a week is recommended for cardiovascular. We just say walking, riding your bike, just moving. And 2 times a week is recommended for strength, which we addressed earlier in the podcast, getting some tension on those muscles, encouraging new bone growth.
So that's not a lot. I mean, that 150 minutes.
And it doesn't matter how you divide it.
Right.
You could do 5 30-minute workouts.
It's doable.
Or you could do 2.5, 45s or whatever the math is.
Yeah. I don't do math very well, but that doesn't sound like it's impossible. That seems like an easy measure.
Especially if you consider, so much of like walking is part of your life. Let's say you take the grandkids to Night of Lights, in the holidays. I bet you've walked an hour and a half, and that counts as moving. Just move your body. You don't have to, make it difficult. You just have to find ways of move. Park further away. If assuming you're mobile, your mobility is fine. Park further away from the grocery store.
Walking the grocery cart back into the store.
Yeah.
From the parking
Plus,
lot.
it's the right thing to do, citizens.
It's the right thing to do. Plus, it says a lot
the
about
steps,
you.
like whenever I go on a cruise ship, I forget about the elevator. It's stairs. Certainly, there's been enough calories consumed on an average cruise that you should 100% be taking the stairs if you can.
Opportunities to take the stairs.
And of course, they also have fitness classes. They have a nice track, but it's just so nice. I just love taking a walk and watching the squirrels, and doing all this. It's nice. And it's a nice thing to do with, your girlfriends or whoever.
Yeah.
Taking
just
a walk.
To be in the moment. I mean, that's walking is a nice way to just be present, I think, which is a whole other conversation, but we won't talk about that today. But in order to do some of these things, we do need to focus on the fourth pillar, which is flexibility, which again can affect all sorts of different things.
And this is the easiest one to talk about.
Yeah, well, let's talk about it. How do we stay flexible?
So moving again, if you're doing your strength training, if you're doing your balance practice, if you're doing your cardio, they all work together. You will be more flexible just by moving. A lot of people complain about tightness, joint pain. It's hard to touch my toes. My low back is hurting. A lot of that can be fixed by stretching. Stretching also promotes circulatory system improvements. We talked about maybe not feeling your toes, getting a little neuropathy in the extremities. Flexibility, stretching promotes circulation. So that's another winner. And here's an example of why stretching, and I guess the term stretching and flexibility are pretty, interchangeable. You don't have to be flexible to stretch. Stretching might make you more flexible, but if you wouldn't consider yourself as a flexible person, like a gymnast, that's okay. It doesn't matter. You still need to stretch your muscles. So your joints have a certain position in your body. Let's talk about the low back. Your low back sits, right above the pelvis. The typical reason a person who's maybe sitting at their desk, for example, even standing on their feet, has an achy back at the end of the day, assuming there's no orthopedic issues. There are no slip discs, there's no degeneration of the discs, but that person has an achy back. So what if that person sat around or stood around, but the bottom line is their hamstrings, which is the muscle below the pelvis, between the knee and the pelvis, the back of your leg. It gets shortened when you're not up and stretching it and bending over. That then pulls your pelvis down a little bit lower than it wants to be. And as a result, the muscles of your back are unhappy with that because maybe they're 2 millimeters lower than they want to be. And it can cause low back pain, achiness. I've had, more than I can count. People who've come to me with back pain. I said, I just want you to try to stretch your hamstrings like 5 times a day. You can, sit down on the floor, reach your toes, depending on their age.
Is touching your toes, bending over and touching your toes?
As long as you don't have high blood pressure and you're not going to fall, and you're not going to get dizzy when you stand up, that's fine. Or you can just sit down on the floor and do it. You can do it seated at the sofa, bend over, just seated at the sofa or the chair. But I said, I want you to do it like 5 times a day and tell me if your back pain gets better. And they're like, it's a miracle. Because their hamstrings had just gotten a little tight, a little short, and the pelvis was pulled down a little bit, and the muscles weren't happy about that. And just loosening the hamstrings, it is so common, just made everything better.
It's all interconnected.
And it was super non-invasive.
Yeah.
There was not an orthopedic issue for this, in this situation for these people. They just had, if you go to touch your toes and it's excruciatingly painful, you probably have excessively tight hamstrings. Yeah. So that's one thing. Posture is another thing. And, I'm looking at us right now. I guess I'm sitting with pretty good posture, actually.
I need to improve. That is number 5.
Your pillow is helping me.
Yeah. So number 5 is
posture. It is. So
we'll go into it as a little teaser for the next episode.
So
but posture is very important. And are we sitting upright? No, I need to sit up different. I'm going to put both feet on the ground.
Having a flexible upper body,
Yeah.
being able to put your shoulders back and stretching the muscles of the chest is very much going to help posture. We can talk about that one later. People don't think about, I need to stretch my chest, but
yeah, no.
believe it or not, if you're hunching, you're shortening those muscles of the chest. If you stick your chest out, when you practice that good posture, you're stretching the muscles of your chest, which will help ensure that you don't hunch.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell a little story. I like to do that stretch, and especially when I'm down here. We're down in Crescent Beach right now doing this interview, looking out at the ocean. But I like the stretch where you reach your arms up and kind of pop back, and then I like to stretch my arms out behind me and put my chest out like this.
That's a good one.
I was doing that one morning out in the surf, and this dude came up behind me, like this older dude, and he said, "Do you come out here much?" And I was like, no, yes. And he said,
another benefit of stretching.
"Are you married?" And I was like, "Yes." And I was hit on for doing some flexible stretches. So, I guess there's another bonus.
It is.
Yeah, stretching could be hot for somebody that you don't really want to.
We're going sideways here, Sue.
I know we're going to. Never mind. But it is an interesting side note. So, with that, Amy, I so appreciate you being on the podcast today, and we will, in the next episode, talk more about hot stretching and
that's right,
posture as well as cognition and reaction time. So make sure everyone stays tuned in to the next episode. And Amy, thank you for being with us today.
My pleasure.
It was fun. Thank you for listening to the Grand Plans podcast today. I hope you took away some good information. I know I sure did. You can look for this podcast on our website, which is mygrandplans.com. I have listed there all of the podcasts and blogs, as well as some other information you might be interested in knowing about. And I also encourage you to sign up for the Grand Plans newsletter. It's a semi-monthly publication that it will come out on. It's coming out on Substack, and it'll come right to your mailbox. So look for that today and join. Thanks again for being with us.